Hello, this is the Werewolf channel. My name's Louis, I'm the moderator. If you subscribe to the channel and like and comment and all those things, you are in with a chance to win a PlayStation 5. I'm going to take another draw on February the 16th. We already gave one away to Jeff Daniels in October, who seemed to be very happy with it. So please like and subscribe, and you could win a PlayStation 5. Now, let's carry on with stories of Will, our real werewolf. This is the final part of me picking up Sally the Hitchhiker. I think part 1 will be available as a little card link kind of thing that you can link to in the top corner of the video. If not, just scroll along to the end of this video and it'll take you to part 1. Probably would be better if you went to part 1. Apart from that, I'm just going to carry on with the story as we set off before. After a lovely hearty breakfast, we went back to the suite and goofed around until checkout time. We paid the Karen and set off on a beautiful snowy day on a new mission to go and kill Sally's parents. Such happy times together. As we set off up the road back to Sally's home, everything was great. The snow had been barreling down all night and the roads were clear of any traffic as we made our way north to her little homestead. The journey started off easily and laughing and joking, but as we got closer to her home, we got more and more stressed. I could sense the change in her. The fear was building. We eventually arrived in her village. It actually reminded me of the village in the mighty film The Werewolf in London. It was even a grim grey day. Honestly, we should have been somewhere in Yorkshire, not Scotland. Yes, I even kind of expected to drive around the corner and see the slaughtered lamb. I was actually fucking really hoping for it. Sadly, that would have been a dream come true. The pub, unfortunately, was some updated new age thing with a cool vibe and probably served fucking Bakewell tart and tangerine cider. Such a letdown. I wanted it to be full of the dour locals that would want to talk about being aware of the moon and don't stray off the path, but these narratives never follow the arc that they really should. We continued through the village and little Sally got tenserer and tenserer as we obviously were getting closer to her home. Right, you. We need a plan, I said. Uh-huh, she replied. I'm going to be Detective Sergeant Dickie Davis, and I will be returning you, the lost runaway, to the bosom of your heartbroken parents. I need you to run with this, Sally. When I get inside and get them all in one room, then we can start all the other fun ideas that we can play with, the torture and the retribution. I only have one rule for you, and that is that you do what I say, please. I may ask you for your ideas, but don't do anything to them without me saying it's cool. I'm really good at this shit, and we want to make it the least fun possible for them. Okay, she replied, but we cannot harm the wee ones, Fen. I smiled over at her and kind of agreed with a nod. She had annoyed me a little by telling my limits. I mean, that didn't bode well for her. Maybe I was getting bored of this whole situation, but to be honest, I was still going to do what the fuck I wanted to at the end of the day. Kids may or may not get through this process. Okay, well, I need a phone number, Sally, to give them the heads up that I'm coming with you. That is probably what the police would really do. So she dived into her phone and read her number out to the listening AI that phoned the phone automatically. Have I mentioned before that this car was fucking awesome? A man answered the call and he already an attitude. Hello, he gave me. Sally shook in her seat and I had to reach out and put my finger to her lips as tears sprang into her eyes and I mouthed in reassurance. It will be fine, Sally, it will be fine. Hello, is this possibly Mr. Dixon? I asked. Aye. He was a Scouser. A fucking Scouser, that was a shock. Why would the Scouser be in Bonnie, Scotland? There again, why would he not? Oh, and for those that don't know, Scousers are from Liverpool, England, and are honestly some of the nicest humans on the planet. So meeting one in Scotland, and one that was a pedo cunt, was a shock. Maybe he was kicked out of Liverpool for being a pedo cunt. This is Detective Sergeant Dickie Davis from Angus. I have a certain young lady here who needs a bed for the night. Google Dickie Davis if you don't know who he is. It just seemed appropriate. On the other end of the phone was silence.
That silence lasted a little too long for the next words to fall out of his mouth. To be sincere, he was lying. Oh, thank God. Oh, thank you. That's amazing news. Is she there with you? Can I speak to her? I looked at Sally and smiled, but she shook her head with a severe no. I'm afraid not, Mr. Dixon. She's in the other car. I'm about to meet them and bring her to you guys. Is that okay? I would just like to bring her home myself, if that's okay. She is such a sweet wee lassie. I could eat her all up, Mr. Dixon. You know, what am I saying? You must want to eat her up all the time, huh? She must be fair frightened of being eaten out by you, I laughed. I know, crass and pointless and weird, but I thought that he would not get my sarcastic comments. That's not really how an orificer of the law behaves. I will have her home within the next couple of hours, sir, I told him, and hung up. Sally was sat smiling at me. Oh, Fen, thank you for doing this, she said, and she also made us nearly crash as she jumped into my lap as I was driving. The car swerved around as she told Giles, the car at AI, to play AC/DC Back in Black. We stopped at the village pub and ordered expensive things off the menu. I drank llama's ear ale, while Sally had a donkey testicle stout. The pub was actually okay for one of those places that had been converted from a traditional British establishment into the plasticised version of the traditional British establishment. The conversation between us was bright as we discussed the manner of her mother and father's death. This little creature, so cute, was such a fucking psycho. Sally's brain was dark. It was truly beguiling. We laughed and smiled together for what was probably the last time. Even Fen enjoyed himself as he sat at the table. The deaths of these humans would be creative. When we'd finished our food and our drink and it was time to go, she was a little drunk, so we waddled her to the car. This would be fun. We arrived at a little cottage on the outskirts of the village. It was a fucking fetid mess of a place. A garden full of trash and weeds showed a slovenly disdain held by the family. An ancient Morris Minor sat rotting on its wheels on the gravel. 2 fridges and an ancient washing machine leant against it. How could this beauty in this car be linked to this shit? As I pulled up in a vehicle worth more than the house, a local pack of the feral children came over on outsized mishmash of bikes. They circled the car and all stopped to look at the posh wanker in the vehicle. It's your fucking Sally Ann, Willie, said one of the mini snot monsters. Hey, mister, what are you doing with our Sally? You a pervert. On her way out of the car, Sally took a little exception to this line of questioning. Fuck off, Billy, or I'll tell your ma about Tuesday last, you wee pervert yourself. This seemed enough to quiet the horde who stood as an audience as we walked up the path to the front door of the hovel. I knocked on the door and was met by bedlam as dogs started their alarms, and movement was heard in the house. The door was opened by a bald, fat bastard. He was maybe early 40s and overweight. He had grey stained jogging bottoms on and a once white t-shirt that used to be... well, it could have once been white, I think. Judging by his pungiosity, he'd not washed the shirt or himself for a while. He was what we say here as bark it. It's beyond unclean. He had a squished up rollie behind his left ear and the nicotine stains of an addict on his hands and teeth. This man had no right to exist on the same planet as my little Sally, and if he had touched her, death was the only outcome for him. This was not objective art opinion, this was the truth. He stood at the door leaning on it, a face of success for some reason. Sally could not make eye contact with him, and he already leered at her over the new outfit she wore. Honestly, if you looked up stereotype, then you would see a picture of this person. Hey, did you get caught stealing those clothes? He asked her. Not hello or how are you. He went straight into demeaning her. He was an utter... The halitosis was an instant factor. The smell of his breath was actually worse than the smell of the overriding dog poo in the air. It made me feel like puking. No, she said, looking at the floor, her defensive body language in full swing. Then he addressed me. Hey, I cannot afford to pay for them, pal. Fucking pal. He called me pal. Oh, he was so dead. It's fine, sir, I said. They're all taken care of, I told him. The horrible human was already assessing the value of the clothing on Sally's body. eBay and Facebook store would be his way to turn those clothes into more alcohol and cigarettes. Thanks, officer, he said, reaching for her arm to drag her in the door. She brushed his hand off and moved behind me. He laughed at this. Hey, Sally's a little shy until you get to know her, like, then not so shy, if you know what I mean. He then winked in a knowing way. Oh, I knew, and the wolf rattled at the cage of my brain. Is it okay if I come in and have a chat with you guys? I asked. Yeah, he said. I'm afraid the house is a bit of a fucking mess, though. The wife does not look after it the way I want. The house was, well, as a werewolf and having my senses, it was a mire of animal shit, piss, mould, fluvium, and whatever the fuck that is, and more shit. It was horrendous. I actually held my breath at first as I walked into the front room that had, well, not been touched or upgraded since the 1970s when they moved in. Probably not cleaned either. The carpet was alive. I mean, you could watch that shit jump up and down live with fleas. It was also a crusty brown and was definitely not supposed to be a crusty brown. He motioned to a chair that was, well, it was its own environment, so I remained stood and looked around in disgust. No wonder Sally wanted to get the fuck away from this place. It was deadly. If you lived here, your immune system must absolutely be on point. The TV in the corner was on, and that was a remnant from the 90s, big, blocky and black. There was not one book in the place, only old newspapers lying around. The walls were wood chip and nicotine yellow. Let me just say that it was super fucking disgusting. I don't want to think about it or go into it anymore in detail. It was just disgusting. I was not going to eat this horrible person. I might die. It would take 2 showers in bleach to get the smell of this place off my skin. He threw a paper from the chair that was obviously his home thrown together throne and let it land on the floor. He was enjoying the discomfort that, he afforded to this well-dressed man with his palpable poverty. Hey, Maggie, he shouted, your daughter's home. An unhealthy, thin, washed-out blonde white woman came from another room, which I assume was the kitchen. I didn't see it, thank God. Her eyes were sunk deep into her skull, and she had the look of harassment and anguish on her face I expected, a welted and bruised face. This was partially hidden from me by the angle of her head and her fringe. My God, if this was not true, you would have thought that the writer was laying it on too thick, but this was more stereotypical. It was, triortypical. That's maybe a new word to describe it. The woman burst into tears at the sign of her daughter, and Sally ran over and hugged her deeply. Fuck, this was too much drama. I could feel the hate waft off the twat in the seat and could smell the desperation of the woman, the desperation of the thought that I might be here to help them. Yuck! Fen, my posit, sat by me looking at the scene, then looking at me and then looking at the scene. There is never a time that the posit is silent, but this had him. He had no idea what the fuck to do. His mind was blown. His head turned to mine and he looked deep into my eyes. What the fuck is this place? Is this real or is this some kind of made up nonsense? He asked. I smiled at him. I had no idea what to tell him. Sally turned from her mother and held her mother's hand and looked at me. This is my family. The kid's upstairs, ma'am. Aye, Sally, we've been so worried. Are you in trouble? The man laughed and picked his paper up, disregarding the scene in front of him. Your mother has been... You fucking bitch, Sally, you little selfish bitch. Thank fuck the filth found you before someone fucking filthy did. He laughed, finishing his brief statement by wiggling his eyebrows at me as though we shared this moment of whatever it was he was trying to communicate. You're fucking lucky to be home where we can look after you. You could have been at the women once or some pervert or other, he said, motioning his question to me. Lucky you have come home to a safe place, hon. Okay, I'm here to also question you parent people because, to be honest, You're fucking useless. You, Mr. Whatever the fuck your name is, are a fucking kiddie fiddler who is more than the scum of the earth, worse than the worst, the shit of the shit. He sat in his seat, gob open at these statements. His wife's face fell into a look of, well, a judge relief. He then smiled, picked up his paper, and looked inside it. Fucking prove it, he said. I dramatically presented Sally to him. I've heard most of it off a witness who was also a victim, who is quite close to us now. Yeah, fucking whatever. Sally's trying to hurt me because she does not like me being here with her mum. Her mum will tell you she has been making this kind of shit up since she was young. Nothing has ever been proved. Eh, Maggie? He turned to his wife, who gave no answer and looked down at the ground. In response, he raised his voice. Eh, Maggie? He looked at her and mumbled something under his breath. You see here, the problem is that Mummy is a coward too, I told him. Sally looked affronted and Maggie's eyes met mine for the first time, her dark, ringed eyes in a sallow yellow face, a face of long-term pain. She has been letting you do this stuff to her kids because it makes her life easier. She has let you do this from fear. Also, she is frightened of you, but looking at you, fuck knows why. Pass me the phone there, Maggie. Let's phone this boy's master and get him done for this shit he's saying. Maggie did not move. I said, pass me the fucking phone. She just stood. Her posture was that of a beaten dog, and she shook her head. What the fuck, Maggie? Oh, I'll get him a fucking selfie and we'll have words later, fucking bitch. He started to stand and tried to make his way to the phone. Sit the fuck down, I ordered. Not angrily, not particularly in a threatening manner, just with a great deal of assertiveness. He was sort of half out of his chair and fell back in his seat in shock. I don't care who the fuck you are, pal, he said. I hate the term pal. It's not a sign of friendship to me, it's a threat. I spat. There is no one to phone. I am here as a judge and executioner. With what this young lady has told me about you, let's refer to you as the sick fuck, I am going to really hurt you, then probably kill you for what you did. If you call me pal again, I will beat you like a ginger-haired stepchild in front of, I assume, who is your wife, pal, I told him. And then I'll kill you. He really had no answer for this. He just sat gob open, his mouldy tooth more gaping and stagnant at this moment. I could see him weighing up his the possible ways of winning this conflict, and then in him I recognised that he realised that if I did what I said, he would be fucked. I sensed it. He was going to make a run for it. What a hero. He went for it. He leapt to his feet and in his own mind tried to distract me by throwing his remote control at me. It was funny as he raised his carcass from the pit. It just seemed like slow motion. He was slow, and I was already standing in front of him, my palm and my hand on his chest, just as his ass left the cushion. I gently pushed him back down, then cuffed him with the back of my hand. The strike was slight, but telling with, not to fuck about. His lip was burst and bleeding as a result, and he fell back and shook in shock. By the time he'd regained his seat, I was back in the exact place I'd been, and it looked completely relaxed to boot. It was as though I'd never moved. Look, pal, you're fucked. You're completely at my mercy. I made a big deal of checking my pockets while he watched, as though I'd lost an important item. He had no clue about what was going on. I stopped my search and smiled at him in a manner I really enjoyed. I knew I was really fucking frightening. And guess what? It looks like I don't have any mercy on me. I'm going to torture you and hurt you for the next couple of hours. I'm going to hurt you in ways that you could not imagine. Nothing sexual, Have you seen the nick of you? But I'm going to break you into tiny little pieces while alive. So you beg these girls for help. Then that help will be given. I will release you from the shit of a life that you sort of lead. You're going to be dead. Proper dead. So let us begin, I said, interlacing my fingers and popping my knuckles, getting ready for the next bit of fun. I stood up, turned my back and took off my lovely pea coat, meticulously folding it and trying to find a clean surface on which I could place it. It was impossible, but I would have to buy a new one when I could. I cricked my neck back and forth, my back to the dead man in the seat. I was going to enjoy this. Fenrir at this point asked if he was needed. I said no, he could just watch me work. I turned. To my shock, Maggie, his wife, was standing in front of the man in the seat, wielding a fucking knife. It was a kitchen knife. It had seen better days, but she held it in my direction with a serious look on her face. "Leave my man alone," she growled. I was incredulous. What? He's a bastard, but he's my bastard. See, you won't be touching him if I can help it. Sally started crying and yelled at her mother to get out of the way. The woman would not listen. I looked at Sally and shrugged. Her tear-stained face was filled with pain and heartbreak. Was it because her mother would betray her for this fucking beast? She would protect this fucking piece of shit? I smiled in acknowledgement of Sally's wishes and swung and smashed a fist into the side of her mother's skull. The woman's body went horizontal at the power of the hook, and she fell and flew some way along the floor before she stopped in a mewling heap. "No, please, Will," shouted Sally. "Dunny." It was bizarre. She then ran to her mother's side on the floor. "I didn't kill her, did I? Fuck's sake. Can you not see that woman is a fucking cunt of the highest order? Why do you want to look after her?" "Because she's me mum, Will," she sniffed. Fuck this, I said. I obviously need to do this stuff that is best for you, my own. I walked up to the two women on the floor. I was proper raging inside, not getting what the fuck was going on. I mouthed my sorries to Sally, then went and stamped on her mother's throat, and stamped again so that she wouldn't have an extended death. The mewling stopped after the second stamp, but I turned to see Sally on her knees, her head in her hands, crying her heart out. No thanks at all. "Why the fuck are you crying? This bitch let that," I now pointed at my pal in the chair, "fucking do things to you that are unforgivable. Then she tried to defend him. Fuck her," I yelled. Sally lay on the floor in tears, holding her dead mother. Sobs racked her body as I moved to stand over her, lifting Sally from the body. "Get up, Sally, you wanted this. You can finish him yourself if you want. Imagine taking his life in the most fucking painful way you can think of. You can take your revenge. This is what you wanted. I can show you how to make it last and cause him agony for hours." I knelt down beside her and grabbed her wrist, taking the discarded knife, and I placed it gently into her hand. "You can kill him. Look at him sitting there in that seat. He thinks he is your fucking lord and master. Look how fucking pathetic he is. A loser that did those things to you. And you can now dispatch him from this world. You can cut him slowly and make him suffer as the knife tracks through his flesh. You can take him to bits. You could even remove his manhood, hold it in your hand and show it to him. You could do things. You could do things to make him suffer for what he did." The man in the chair started to vocalise his fears. He started to protest and cry, "Hey, Sally, you know I love you. It was our special time. I treated you like my good girl, a princess. You wouldn't kill your old man, would you? Ignore this man here. He's not thinking about your safety. He doesn't care about you in the slightest," babbled the fucking pedo. I grabbed her head and forced her to look in his direction. "Sally, look at him. Look at that pathetic piece of shit that he is. He was a born loser. He deserves death and pain. Don't be like your mum and protect this piece of shit. He will only go on to hurt others as he has hurt you. If you need help, I will show you where and what to cut. We can hamstring him and let him try and run from us. We can blind him so he can't see what is happening, but just feel it. What do you say, Sally? What do you say? You want to kill him, don't you? The man in the chair was now breaking down. Tears and snot exuded like slug slime from his features as he cried and protested no. I looked at Sally with an expectation of what would be her next move. I saw the brave, young, beautiful woman go and cut the man a new smile to hide his grief. I couldn't wait. Her brutalising this creature would be beautiful art to my soul. I stared at the man in excitement, imagining the wound she caused him, listening to her joy and his misery as she taught this beast, a lesson in humility and pain. Her joy at carving him like a fucking ham joint, slowly removing his life while chastising him for his past actions. Never fucking happened. She cast herself on the carpet once more, throwing the knife from her hand, and it landed near the man, and I saw him get enough control of himself where he pondered on getting to the blade in order to defend himself. In my mind, something broke. I'd done all this for fucking her. I'd brought her here and given her the opportunity to get her life back and enjoy the punishment of those that had hurt her in such a horrific way. This little ungrateful bitch. I had done all this for her. She'd been lunch, and then I'd shown her some care and trust. I'd shown her gentle consideration. I had given her my time, and reflecting on it, I'd cared for her, and in response, as all humans, she had fucking failed me. Humans are useless. This would be my last try to show one proper way to do things. Fuck it, she was now forgotten and dead to me. I stood up over the flawed girl and wanted to crush and hurt and stamp, but could not. A part of me I hated will not allow it. What the fuck? Will, kill it now. It's a liar and an ungrateful thing, kill it, came from my werewolf soul. I listened to him, but stood impotent over the girl. In my head, I built an excuse not to kill her. Was it an excuse, or would it actually be the worst thing that I could do for her? I will let her live, actually. I will let her live so she can play this over and over again in her head. The time she had the opportunity and did not take it, I told Fenrir. He went into silent thought and then said, "Yeah, that's actually much worse. Will, I like that. She will live, and she will always have to understand that this happened because of her desires." Ha! I love it. I was so angry. I thought I would kill her, but I just let it go. Leaning over her, I rubbed and tousled her hair. I smiled into her tear-filled eyes and spoke to her. "Goodbye, Sally. I really liked our adventure. I will always remember the fun we had together. The shame of it is that you could have lived with me and been safe and secure and loved. You would have had a home with me and never needed anything, but you're not made of the correct stuff for that to work. You're too weak." She burst deeper into gulping cries. The man had not moved. He could have got to the knife he'd tried. In fact, I really wanted him to try. It would have given him the moment of hope that I could have ripped from him. He did nothing. A born coward, a scab of a human amongst pitiful humans. I walked over to him, bending my head height to his. I put my hands on the armrests on either side of his chair and just stared into his soul. I saw cowardice and avarice. This creature was truly broken and evil. He was a piece of living art in himself. Should I destroy him? My left hand reached for his throat and grasped the windpipe firmly. I was not going to let him go quickly by stopping the blood flow to his brain. I was going to stop the air from getting to his lungs. He would die of suffocation, and it would take a long time and be horrific for him. It would be horrendous. I would let him almost fail and then come back and go through the same process again and again until I got bored. I squeezed and released, constantly taking him to the edge of his life, then letting it come back to him, constantly looking to his eyes as I did it. I felt his horror and his anguish. I felt him trying to fight his way back to life, and he fought for every extra second he could. Finally, I squeezed, and he grasped my arm with both arms as I pushed him back into the chair. His life, as shit as it was, had passed before his eyes, and I shared it with him. As he started to weaken and relax, I let him sit back in the chair, which he loved as much as he did, and just kept my hand squeezing on his throat. You fucking scum. Go. Death is too good for you, but I want you to die, and know it was done because of what you did, because of how you behaved. Karma is not a thing, but a pissed off werewolf is. His hands fell, and his gasping and gurgling slowed as he finally failed. After another couple of minutes he slumped forward. He never took another breath. I lifted his slack head to mine to see empty eyes devoid of life, then used my werewolf strength to tear his head from the shoulders. Sally was still crying in a heap. I patted her on the way to the kitchen and left the head next to hers. I washed as much blood off as I could and then picked up my jacket. On the way out, I picked up the house phone and contacted 999, and in my best Taggart impression, I got to say, "There's been a murder," and dropped the phone handset to the floor, leaving the operator asking for me. I left her there to deal with it. Her choice. Be strong or be weak. Weak does not interest me. She fucked it. We could have had fun. I wonder what happened to little Sally for a few seconds every now and again. All I remember is I took the car back and my interest just changed. I'd added a few more hours to my drive. What a shame I would have to do it in this beautiful car. Fucking humans. And that's the end of me and the Hitchhiker. Poor Sally. Thank you for listening. Bye.